Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Happy 2024. In case you're new here, my name is Laura and I'm a PhD student of comparative literature in Germany, and on this channel I review mostly classics from the antique times to nowadays, but with a focus on the 19th century. And today I want to talk about a short story by the Japanese writer Ryunosuke Akutagawa called Kumo no Ito, or The Spider Thread, which was published in April 1918. I've got it with me here in this collection. It's a German translation and the collection is called Rashomon. It's also the same in English, but I will read to you the English text as the story is really short and I just wanted to give you an impression of the beautiful language and the content of it. And as it's really short, that's rather convenient, I thought. So the story is separated into 3 parts. And I just want to quickly get into it and afterwards comment a little bit on it and give you some context and also tell you what might have inspired Akutagawa to write the story. So I hope you enjoy listening. Let me start. The Spider Thread, Part 1. And now, children, let me tell you a story about Lord Buddha Shakyamuni. It begins one day as he was strolling alone in paradise by the banks of the lotus pond. The blossoms on the pond were like perfect white pearls, and from their golden centers wafted forth a never-ending fragrance wonderful beyond description. I think it must have been morning in paradise. Soon Lord Shakyamuni stepped to the edge of the pond, where he glanced down through the spreading lotus leaves to the spectacle below. Directly beneath the lotus pond of paradise lay the lower depth of hell, and as he peered through the crystalline waters, he could see the river of 3 crossings and the mountain of needles as clearly as if he were viewing pictures in a peep box. Down there, his eye came to rest upon a man named Kandata, who was writhing in hell with all the other sinners. This great robber had done many evil deeds. He had even killed people and burned down houses. But it seems that Kandata had performed one single act of goodness. Passing through a deep wood one day, he had noticed a tiny spider creeping along the wayside. His first thought was to stamp it to death, but as he raised his foot, he told himself, "No, no. Even this puny creature is a living thing. To take its life for no reason would be too cruel." And so he had let it pass unharmed. Now, as he looked down at the netherworld, Lord Shakyamuni recalled how Kandata had saved the spider, and he decided to reward him for it by delivering him from hell, if possible. By happy chance, he turned to see a heavenly spider spinning a beautiful silver thread atop a lotus leaf, the color of shimmering jade. Gently lifting the spider thread, he lowered it straight down through the pearl-like blossoms to the depth far below. Part 2. Here with the other sinners at the low point of the lowest hell, Kandata was endlessly floating and up and sinking down again in the pond of blood. Wherever he looked there was only pitch darkness, and when a faint shape did pierce the shadows, it was the glint of a needle on the horrible mountain of needles, which only heightened his sense of doom. All were silent as the grave, and when a faint sound did break the stillness, it was the feeble sigh of a sinner. As you can imagine, those who had fallen this far had been so worn down by the tortures in the 7 other hells that they no longer had the strength to cry out. Great robber though he was, Kandata could only thrash about like a dying frog as he choked on the blood of the pond. And then, children, what do you think happened next? Yes, indeed. Raising his head, Kandata chanced to look up toward the sky above the pond of blood, and saw the gleaming silver spider thread, so slender and delicate, slipping stealthily down through the silent darkness from the high, high heavens, coming straight for him. Kandata clapped his hands in joy. If only he could take hold of this thread and climb up and up, he could probably escape from hell, and maybe with luck he could even enter paradise. Then he would never again be driven up the mountain of needles or plunged down into the pond of blood. No sooner had the thought crossed his mind than Kandata grasped the spider thread and started climbing with all his might, higher and higher. As a great robber, Kandata had had plenty of practice at this kind of hand-over-hand rope climbing. Hell and heaven, though, are untold thousands of leagues apart, so it was not easy, even for a man like Kandata, to escape, no matter how hard he tried. He soon began to tire, until he couldn't raise his arm for even one more pull. He had no choice but to stop for a rest, and as he clung to the spider thread, he looked down far below. Then he realized that all his climbing had been worth the effort. The pond of blood was hidden now in the depth of the darkness, and even the dull glint of the terrifying mountain of needles was far down beneath his feet. At this rate, it might be easier than he had imagined to climb his way out of hell. Twining his hands in the spider thread, Kandata laughed aloud, as he had not in all the years since he had come to this place. "I've done it! I've done it!" And then what do you think he saw? Far down on the spider thread, countless sinners had followed after him, and they were clambering up the thread with all their might, like a column of ants. The sight struck him with such shock and fear that for a time his mouth gaped open like an idiot's. Only his eyes moved. The slim thread seemed likely to snap from his weight alone. How could it possibly hold so many people? If it were to break midway, then Kandata himself would plummet back down into the hell he had struggled so mightily to escape. How terrible that would be! Still, from the pitch-dark pond of blood, an unbroken column of sinners came squirming up the fragile, gleaming thread by the hundreds, by the thousands. He knew he would have to do something now, or the thread would break in two. Kandata screamed at them. "Listen to me, you sinners! This spider thread is mine! Who said you could climb it? Get off! Get off!" At the very instant, the spider thread, which until then had been perfectly fine, broke with a snap just where Kandata was hanging from it. Before he could even cry out, Kandata fell slicing through the air, spinning like top down, head first, into the darkest depths. Behind him, all the remaining was the dangling short end of the spider thread from paradise, delicately gleaming in the moonless, starless sky. And now we come to part 3. Standing at the edge of the lotus pond in paradise, Lord Shakyamuni watched everything that happened. And when, in the end, Kandata sank like a stone into the pond of blood, the Holy One resumed his stroll, his face now tinged with sorrow. Kandata had thought to save himself alone, and as just punishment for this lack of compassion, he had fallen back into hell. How shameful it must have seemed in the eyes of Lord Shakyamuni. The lotus of the lotus pond, however, were unperturbed. They swayed their perfect pearl-white blossoms near the feet of Lord Shakyamuni, and from their golden scent wafted forth each time a never-ending fragrance, wonderful beyond description. I think it must have been close to moon in paradise. So that was the story. I hope you enjoy listening to it, and I hope you also realize the strong use of imagery here and also nature descriptions. I especially love the framing of the story from the beginning with the morning in paradise, and it must have been close to noon in paradise. So you can really imagine how Buddha is walking along and then letting down the spider thread and seeing what Kandata and the other sinners do, and then in the afternoon everything's over already. I think it's a very strong story, and actually I don't even really think that the third part would have been needed, so as it seems to function as a kind of explanation, because I don't really think you even need an explanation, because it's like speaking for itself very well. But let me know what you think. It's a very short story. I think it's even one of the shortest in the whole collection, but it's actually one of my favorites. I think I especially like it so much because of the language and because it's so short and concise nonetheless. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about what might have inspired Akutagawa to write the story. So there's different stories that he probably read before writing the story here and publishing it in 1918. One of them is published in The Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoyevsky, which was published in 1880, so like around 30 years before. And At least the commentary said that Akutagawa read Dostoyevsky's work, and in there you can find a parable called The Onion. The story is almost the same, just with a woman who has been sinning all her life, and now she's got a chance to come to heaven or paradise, because she has been doing one good deed, which was giving an onion to a beggar woman. And she's also acting the same way as Kandata does, so she's only thinking of herself, and therefore she doesn't succeed. And I think it's really striking, this resemblance between the two stories. I think it's really interesting to see how during these times, like the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, the Western stories came to Japan, and also Japanese writers traveled to Europe more and more, and so they exchanged their stories and their ideas, and this is how you can build all these connections and also find some intertextual relations. And you can see that Akutagawa was probably inspired by Dostoyevsky, and I think that's really interesting. And I didn't know about that before, so maybe that's something that you might be interested in too. I think I will review some more short stories by this collection in the future. I also already reviewed In a Grove. I will link the video below in case you are interested. But there's also so many other stories that are really worth a read. I want to review also Rashomon and The Monkey. I think also Kesa and Morito, and maybe even one or two more. And I think when I have finished reading the whole collection, I want to make a complete review of it and tell you my opinion about it. I hope you enjoyed the video. I will link my playlist of videos about Japanese classic literature, Japanese classic books and stories down below in the description. So have a look at the other videos as well. There's also reviews of modern stories and modern novels published in the last few years. So if that's something you're interested in, maybe you can find something interesting in that too. And I hope you enjoyed the story, and I will see you next week. Bye.